Okay, I'm Ronald Simpson Bay, current alumni associate with Just Leadership USA. Man, my story, man. My story is my life is a study in contrast. You know, I call myself the extroverted introvert. People don't believe I'm introverted, because of my sociable nature. But I'm actually an introvert. People don't know that much about me. I was the oldest of 5 children, grew up in Flint, Michigan. My dad was a school teacher, my mom was a homemaker. My dad his primary was elementary school. He taught at Michigan State for a while. He taught high school for a while, but he settled on, elementary. He liked to work with the kids. We had a beautiful home when I was growing up. We used to travel summers in a motor home. It was odd, being a black family in the 60s and 70s with a motor home and traveling all over the country. We were like, we were the Jeffersons before the Jeffersons. We had already moved on up.
Oh, okay.
So from the outside, it looked like, we had this amazing life. People thought we had this amazing lifestyle. But on the inside, it was we lived a tortured life. My dad was a hell of a strict disciplinarian. He was nice to the kids in school and everybody on the outside, but he was hell on all of us in the family. He would beat me. He was mean to my mother. It was crazy. It was nothing like the external appearance of what it was. So I grew up being angry, aggressive. I never got kicked out of school. I used to be in fights sometimes. I never got kicked out of school. I was a good student. I was an excellent athlete. I was state championship in track in 1975. Telling my age now. and I even went to Eastern Michigan running track in the 70s. But my life was not. I was battling internal traumas from being, traumatized as a child. I see my father abuse my mother. My father abused our family, sort of like what Ron talked about. And it just, when you're in a dysfunctional family, you don't realize the dysfunction. When you're in dysfunction, you don't realize it. You're like, man, what the hell? You just live like, nothing wrong with my family, this is normal. And so as years passed, and I became an adult. I got married myself in 1977. I married my first wife. And we had a rocky marriage. We stayed married like 5 years before we got divorced. And, I didn't realize, I was becoming exactly what my dad was without even realizing it. I'm being abusive, verbally abusive. I'm just like, I'm not being a good mate. So my family life was so abusive that in 1980, my both parents were at home. My mom and dad had been married about 25, 26 years at this time. My mom shot and killed my dad in the marital home in front of my 2 younger brothers and sisters. I was 22 at the time. I was married, had 2 children, a son and a daughter. And so now I'm responsible for taking care of my own family. My mom and my younger brother and sister, they moved in my home, my marital home. I was going to college because I was working at General Motors. I was a tool and die maker. And I was on the General Motors pre-apprenticeship program, apprenticeship program, because I graduated in 1980. But, so I'm working full time, I'm in school, I got a house full of people. So I never grieved. Never had time to grieve. That was July 25th, 1980. And you can see the trajectory of my life spiral up from there. Because July 25th, 1986, I walked into prison on the exact same day of my father's death. But in the years in between, I started selling drugs. Before that, I had never sold drugs. I hadn't been involved in in that kind of lifestyle. I was a mechanic. I had a business. I worked at General Motors. I was married. But I started during the day, I was doing that. I was working. But at night, I'm selling drugs. I'm pistol whipping people. I'm in that life. I'm out there living that life. Because, it was an event. I would go 3 or 4 days at a time with no sleep. So I divorced him. I divorced my first wife during this period in 1981, about 6 or 8 months after my dad died. I got divorced and just went on about my life. After that was a blur. Drugs, work, DJing, whatever I could do, I refused to sleep. So I caught this case one day, 1985, my buddies and I, we running around picking up trap money. We had dope houses, so we picking up money from the houses we selling drugs out of. And one of the houses was under surveillance. It was an apartment complex. The police had undercover surveillance. We didn't know it. We go in, I go to pick up money. The guy wasn't there I was looking for, so we leave. So as we leaving, the undercover cops, apparently they see us, because me and my buddy, we walk across the street to get in my car, because 4 of us together. And we got in the car and drove off. So the guy that was driving my car about a block away from the apartment complex, hey, Ryan, somebody's following us. I said, well, good, it might be the guy I'm looking for. Stop, so I get my money. So we stop, I get out the car, I'm leaning on the hood, drinking a 40-ounce beer. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just living the life. Get ready to go to work. I'm on second shift at General Motors. Yeah. So the car pulls up, a black guy in a Z28 with Jerry curl hair, and everybody like, who is this guy? Nobody in the car knew who he was. He pulled up behind us, and when he gets out, he squats down in the door frame with a gun. 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the streets of Flint, Michigan, 1985, somebody put on a gun on you, it's not usually to say hello. So a shootout ensued. The guys in my car opened up fire on this guy. So the shots are being exchanged back and forth. I'm standing outside in between the exchange, and to this day, I can still feel the hairs on my neck stand up, hearing them bullets whizzing by me because they're shooting at each other, and I'm in the crossfire. It makes you think that movie, The Matrix.
Matrix.
When the bullets is whizzing by and you dodging out the way, it's like super slow motion. So I run out of the way, get out of the line of fire, and I run around the garage and jump over a fence and run off. The guys in my car take off. And I don't know, I said, who the hell is this guy shooting at us? So I can hear the cars going through the neighborhood and shooting and carrying on. So I walk over to the garage where I worked on cars at, and I try to call my buddies to tell them to come pick me up. I couldn't catch anybody. I called the girlfriend, the driver's girlfriend, and said, well, when so-and-so get home, tell them at the garage, come pick me up. Half hour later, she calls me back. She said, they've been arrested. They've been in a shootout with the police. I'm like, what? So I knew what that meant. They were driving my car. So the police were coming to look for me, surely. So I got arrested that evening, ended up getting charged with assault with intent to commit murder on a Flint police officer. And so we go to trial. 2 of the guys turned state evidence, testified for the prosecutor against me and the other guy. Now, mind you, the police officer's statement never said I shot at him, never said I had a gun. He said he saw me standing outside the car with a brown bag in my hand, which was the beer. But 9 months later at trial, that turned into me jumping over a fence with a gun, shooting, smoke coming out of the gun. He testified that the gun was smoking when I went over the fence, and I thought that was absurd because, what I know about bullets, smokeless powder. I said, was I Davy Crockett or somebody shooting a musket? Guns don't smoke. So they made up all these stories. I ended up getting convicted, getting 30 to 50 year sentence. And I was angry. I went to prison angry. I was in a lot of stuff. I was guilty of a lot of things, but I wasn't guilty of shooting this police officer. He ended up getting shot 2 miles away from the scene. He got hit in the arm at a second shootout. So I go to prison. The first 5 years, I was part of the problem, not part of the solution, because I was angry at the world. I was angry at myself. I was angry at everybody. When I got to prison and saw that, 60, 70% of the guys didn't have high school education, I hadn't been to college, and I was aggressive, I said, I'm gonna run this. So first 5 years, I was like the guy you see on TV creating all the problems on the yard. 1990 was my first epiphany. A friend of mine brought me a book called Visions for Black Men by Dr. Naeem Akbar. It's a 90-page paperback book, powerful. powerful. I read that book and it clicked something in me. It made me think of self-responsibility because it talked about being the duty that we have to our communities as people, as black men to the community, that we should be doing these certain things. And it had like a checklist, the transition from male to boy to man. And then when you rate yourself along that scale, I consider myself to be a man all these years. When I read this, I said, I've been a damn fool all these years. I said, I'm a clown. And I hate being a hypocrite. So I worked on start changing myself. 1990, I started changing my way of thinking. I started getting away from the prison yard lifestyle, so to speak. And I went in the law library. I became a paralegal through classes at Jackson Community College. In 1992, I got hired as a paralegal for Prison Legal Services of Michigan. So fast forward 4 more years, in 1994, I just had this huge epiphany. I had reached like my lowest point in my life, I felt like. I was on the yard in Jackson, like the toughest yard in the state with all these killers and everything going on. I'm standing on the phone crying like a baby. I felt like my life was in shambles. I had failed at everything I thought I should be successful at. I was in prison, all my appeals had been dead. I didn't know what I was gonna do. From that point, it was no way but up. So I made it my point to not fight so much for myself. It's like Mario said, beating down the door for myself. I started trying to beat down the door for others. Because I started looking around me and I saw the injustice and inhumanity of prison. I saw the trauma that prison inflicts on people as a system. And I dedicated myself at that time to change it. So I became an advocate. I advocated for everything, anything that was incarcerated related, trying to reform the system. I tried to change. I became a block rep. I became a named plaintiff on the largest class action lawsuit in Michigan at the time, Kane versus MDOC. I became a paralegal. I became the leader of various organizations, a religious organization called the Moorish Zion Temple of America, the National Lifers of America, JCs, NAACP. Hasta had me on their board. And the only Spanish I could speak was ole. Hola. See? That's what I mean. But I became an agent. I dedicated myself to become an agent for change. And the years go by, and in 2001, I had another epiphany somewhat. Father's Day 2001, I'm at the Thumb facility waiting for a visit from my children. And I talked to my son that morning. I had 4 children. My son said, "Hey, Dad, I'm picking the girls up to come to visit." So you know how it is when you're sitting waiting for a visit. You're sitting there on your bunk. You're not trying to sweat. It's Father's Day. 2 or 3 o'clock go by, 4 o'clock, no visit. So I started making calls. Could not find anyone. I mean, that's odd. I mean, I got a big network of people, but I couldn't catch anybody. I called my ex-mother-in-law. I said, "Hey, Mama, how you doing?" She said, "Hey, Ronnie." I said, "Have you seen the kids? They're supposed to come visit me." She said, "You haven't heard?" I said, "No, what's going on?" She said, "Little Ronnie been shot and killed." My only son was 21 years old on Father's Day 2001, was shot and killed by a 14-year-old juvenile. And how do you handle something like that in prison? I've been in prison for 15, 16 years at the time. And my anger had pretty much subsided. I figured like, well, I gotta make the best of this. I'm in here. But I was so determined to make a change that I advocated for the 14-year-old child to be treated as a juvenile, because I saw what prison did to people. And I didn't wish prison on my worst enemy. I didn't wish prison on the guy that killed my son. I did not wish prison on him. So I advocated for him to be tried as a juvenile and treated as a juvenile, which he was. So I always call that my first contribution to the restorative justice movement. That that my son, his life not be in vain, that I dedicate myself to this work because of his life. In 2009, I had filed a habeas corpus in federal court in 2006. 2009, the federal courts reversed my conviction, which was a very great time. But it was bittersweet because they appealed it and nobody would set bond. None of the courts would give me bond, even though I had my conviction had been reversed. So I sat in prison for 3 more years before the Sixth Circuit Appellate Court ordered them to either release him or give me a new trial. So I go back to court, take a plea bargain, time served. Here I am. since then, I've been fortunate enough to, my first job, when I first got out, I worked at a oil manufacturing company. They made cooking oil and popcorn oil and salad oil and just all, I mean, it was a nasty job. But I did it for like 90 days, and I said, well, that's enough of that. And I was a mechanic before I got into prison, so I started working on cars again. My brother had a little garage in Flint, and so I just started doing brake jobs and tune-ups, and did that for a year till Natalie Holbrook gave me a chance. She gave me an internship at American Friends Service Committee. I became an intern part-time, and after the internship ended, I became a full-time program associate. Thank you, Natalie. And from that, I got enrolled in a fellowship in New York called Just Leadership USA. And at the time, they were doing a year-long training at Columbia Law School for formerly incarcerated people. I was in the inaugural cohort. And I went through it, I graduated, and they offered me a job. So now I'm the alumni associate for the organization. We currently have 258 leaders in 27 states in Washington, D.C., all over the country from Alaska to Florida. So I work coordinating their speaking engagement, job opportunities, any opportunity I can find to amplify and elevate their work. That's what I do now. So it's been a study in contrast. It's been humbling and it's been harrowing at the same time. So I'm honored to be here and honored to be part of this, and onward with heart and mind change.
Thank you.
Thank you.